Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a supernatural horror film, Hereditary. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. Annie and her family hold a funeral for her mother, who just died a few days ago. She delivers the eulogy at her mother's service, saying her mother seldom expressed her real feelings to people, even her kids. And Annie, as her eldest daughter, knows nothing about who her friends were or what she did. Her mother loved to wear an oddly shaped necklace. She never took it off her neck till the end of her life, and she passed it to Annie and demanded her wear it too. When the son Peter was born, Annie's mother asked several times to let Peter live with her. Not knowing why, Annie refused her erratic mother and thought that she was indifferent toward her in the past and thus couldn't take good care of Peter. However, when the little daughter Charlie was born, Annie felt obliged and accepted her mother's request to care for Charlie. Only 1 year before her mother's death did the family reunite and live together. When arranging her mother's belongings, Annie finds a letter written to her by her mother, asking for forgiveness for all the things she could not tell, and telling Annie to try not to despair her losses, as she'll see in the end that they were worth it, and that their sacrifice will pale next to the rewards. Annie is totally confused by the so-called secrets, sacrifice, and even the rewards mentioned in the letter. The letter sounds mysterious, just as her mother had been in the past decades. Her little daughter Charlie is introverted and even seems dull. The favorite place for her is the small attic, which she often visits, and locks herself up there all day long. She behaves so weird, and even cuts off a dove's head, and plays around with it as a toy. Someday, Charlie follows an odd beam of glowing light, and comes into the treehouse. But after walking out of the treehouse, she wears an empty look, holding the dove's head. One evening, Annie tells her husband she's going to a movie, but actually attends a grief support gathering, at which people release their grief and counsel one another. Time flies by. It seems the family returns to normal. One day, Peter asks if he can drive his mother's car to attend a classmate's party. Busy sculpting miniature dioramas in her workshop, Annie then asks Peter to invite his sister to go with him. So Peter reluctantly takes his sister and drives to the party. At the party, Peter blows off his shitty sister and smokes marijuana with his friends. The introvert Charlie is left alone and takes some cake, but ends up being allergic to some nut contained, causing her to suffocate. Charlie manages to approach her brother for help. Peter carries her to the car and rushes her to the hospital. On the way, in an effort to breathe better, Charlie sticks her head out of the window. But right at that time, Peter swerves to avoid a deer lying on the road, and the car hits a utility pole violently when he slams on the brakes. Shocked at what he has done, Peter tries several times, but still dares not see from the rear view what happened to his sister, and he drives home in a calm daze. The next day, Charlie's head is found on the road, crawling with ants. Annie kneels on the floor and wails. Grief seizes the family again because of Charlie's tragic death. Feeling guilty, Peter can't forgive himself for his sister's death. When Annie feels better, she tells her husband she's going to see a movie. Actually, she drives to the grief support gathering again, but decides to turn around upon arrival. Before she can leave, a fellow group member, seemingly a warm-hearted woman, spots Annie and stops her to talk. She asks how Annie has been doing since her mother's death. Hearing Annie sobbing on the loss of her daughter, Warm-Hearted invites Annie for a drink. When Annie refuses her, Warm-Hearted confides in Annie about the loss of her son and grandson, who were drowned 4 months ago. Annie soon feels closer because of similar misery. Warm-Hearted writes Annie her address and says she will always be available when Annie feels sad and lonely. Annie cannot focus on her sculpting because of the incidents. So she follows the address and pays a visit to Warm-Hearted. When Annie comes in, she notices that the pattern of the doormat is the same as her mother's favorite. She feels genial and confides in Warm-Hearted, telling her she has often sleepwalked. And once when sleepwalking, she lit a match, trying to set fire to her son's bed. Peter woke up and thought she was going to kill him. And the incident estranged her son from her. Since then, they have often quarreled because of trifles. A few days later, Annie bumps into Warm-Hearted at a store. Warm-Hearted looks excited and says she has got through it completely. She explains to Annie that a psychic has taught her how to communicate with her late grandson. Annie is suspicious of psychics, but warm-hearted persuades Annie to her home to witness how it works, so Annie comes to her house. Warm-hearted conjures her late grandson. Seeing the deceased moving the cup and writing on the toy blackboard, Annie cannot believe her eyes. Warm-hearted then teaches Annie how to conduct conjure and gives her a copy of the cryptic incantation that is written in an unknown language, and tells her to recite the cryptic incantation just according to the syllables, and that her entire family, her son Peter in particular, must stay around when summoning. Annie does not summon the dead when she returns home, as she never believed in psychics before. But she tosses and turns and cannot sleep. So she decides to give it a try, in the hope of her late daughter showing up. She wakes her husband and her son up from their sound sleep, and the family stand hand in hand to conjure Charlie, though the husband does not believe at all he could see his late daughter. Everyone's heart beats fast when the cup on the table moves. Annie picks up Charlie's old sketchbook and asks the dead to draw something. Peter is so scared that he almost suffocates, so the husband asks her to stop. As they argue whether to continue the seance or not, the candle flame suddenly shoots high. Annie closes her eyes, lowers her head, and makes gruesome roars. When she opens her eyes, she speaks in a little girl's voice, seemingly possessed by her late daughter. The husband snaps Annie out of her trance by dousing her with water. Annie is completely unaware of what happened, and Peter is frightened and cries. After the seance, Peter becomes absent-minded. During school, Peter sees the same odd glowing light that Charlie previously saw. Following the light, he goes out of the classroom. Peter has a nightmare that someone is madly plucking his hair. He wakes up in fright, but only sees his mother standing in front of his bed. This makes Peter even more sure that his mother is going to attack him. Annie is unable to explain her sleepwalk, and the estrangement gets worse. The husband calls Annie and blames her on the phone. Annie becomes angry and destroys all the dioramas she has made for months, and the couple become cold to each other. In late Charlie's old sketchbook, there is a drawing of Peter's face on each page, with a cross on each eye. Sensing that it must do her son bad, Annie throws the sketchbook into the fireplace. As the sketchbook burns, Annie's arm mirrors and catches fire. No matter how she tries, she cannot put out the fire on her arm. Annie has to rescue the book, and the fire on her arm dies the moment the sketchbook is saved from the fire. It seems Annie's life is connected to the sketchbook, so she gives up destroying it. Annie returns to Warm-Hearted for help. She knocks at the door, but no one replies. Inside the house, an altar has been set up. From a photo of Peter, she suddenly realizes that the sacrifice is nobody else but her son, especially when recalling the extraordinary enthusiasm of Warm-Hearted and the pattern of the doormat. Annie hurries back home and rummages through her late mother's remains. She reads her mother's diary and is terrified to learn that the ritual she conducted did not conjure her late daughter, but invoked Paimon, king of the hell instead. Annie also finds photos of her mother with Warm-Hearted, revealing that Warm-Hearted and Annie's mother knew each other very well. More photos tell Annie that they were in the same coven, and her mother was the chief, addressed as their queen. Later, Annie smells the stink and goes up to the attic, where she discovers the headless corpse of her late mother. On the other side, Peter is possessed in class, suffocating. He trembles with his face twisting, and he falls onto the desk, breaking his nose. Then he snaps out of the trance, with cries of terror and pain. When the husband brings Peter home, Annie tells the husband in a trembling voice about the headless corpse. So he comes up to the attic and runs down with a scream. Annie stops his efforts to call the police, telling him the family are cursed by the coven, and begs the husband to burn Charlie's old sketchbook to save Peter, regardless of her connection to it, as she is willing to die for her beloved son. The husband hesitates, thinking his wife is mentally sick, so Annie throws the sketchbook into the fire by herself, even though she presumes doing so she will burn to death. Instead, it is the husband who is spontaneously on fire. Annie watches him die, transfixed with shock. Peter wakes up and finds his father's charred corpse, his mother attached to the ceiling like a spider, and what the baby hell, a hormone-greasy guy standing by the door, shamelessly naked, without wearing any H-bag. I'd better call the police to issue the guy a ticket for nudity violation while filming. Annie jumps down from the ceiling and chases Peter madly. Peter runs to the attic and takes away the ladder. But when he looks up, he sees his mother hanged in the ceiling, and she is sawing her neck off. Peter jumps out of the window in great horror. His head hits the ground, which knocks him out. He rises when the odd glowing light hovers around him. Wandering like a ghost, Peter follows his mother's floating headless corpse into the treehouse, where a special ritual is performing. Several headless corpses kneel down. Behind them are an assembly of naked devil worshippers. Peter's grandmother's photo is hanging on the wall. She is their queen. They are the coven who worship Paimon, the king of hell. Peter is crowned by them. It's shown that at first, Paimon was attached to the daughter Charlie, but Paimon is in favor of robust male due to its hormone fetish. That is why the coven replace her with Peter. Then, the worshippers all hail for their revived king. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.